in Ontario, child support can be claimed not only from the biological and adoptive parents of children, but it can also be claimed from people who have stood in the place of a parent. And in this case, the grandparents apparently definitely did, because they stepped in when the parents were not able to care for their child, so that their child did not end up in or their grandchild did not end up in foster care. And so they, rather than having the child placed with foster parents, they took over and looked after this child for, I guess, almost a year. And for that year, they were the people parenting this child, and that means that they stood in the place of a parent. And judges in Ontario are very reluctant to let people stop being in the place of a parent if they just want to get out of paying child support.
So this is a cautionary tale for grandparents. If you are asked to step in and provide custody, even if it's just emergency custody, then you could be on the hook for child support later on.
Yeah, that's true, and that's probably one of the things that weighs heavily on the judge in this case about not wanting to do that, because obviously you would much rather have a child who needs to be in the care of family members than in the care of foster parents. In fact, the whole child protection regime in Ontario was sort of designed towards putting kids back in the care of their family members, if at all possible, rather than in foster care.
You know, that was an extreme case with regards to foster care, but let's talk about another. There's a double whammy for these poor grandparents. They also say, before their son passed away, I guess they were going through a divorce, the girl's mother and their son, and they were officially asked by their son to, help out with a custody dispute. So even though they say they weren't present in court when the judge made the decision, because they were afforded the ability to go see their kids, then that apparently is, they've stood in as parents.
Well, that they've got a right of access. It's the same as, access orders are access orders. So, they can have an access order in favor of a parent, or you can have an access order in favor of a grandparent or other family member. So they have that order, and I guess now Mom wants them to have the correspondent child support responsibility for having that right of access.
Yeah, otherwise, she says, every second weekend, the visitation you're getting right now, we're going to try and cut that off. It seems extreme. It's just heartbreaking for that grandchild, who's clearly caught in the middle here. I was reading that one of the reasons the case could have wider reaching implication is the changes to the Children's Law Reform Act brought in the last year by a private member's bill. Can you elaborate on how that act could have changed things and why it did?
Well, the Children's Law Reform Act has always allowed these are people who are not a child's parents to apply for custody or access to a child, and this would be in cases where the parent, other people than in a divorce situation. This would be anyone can apply to custody of any child essentially, but the amendments made it clear that grandparents were allowed to do that, and the judges had to consider applications by grandparents for access to their children, so that grandparents cannot be cut out of their children's lives. And so that has, because of it's made clear that this is something that specifically grandparents are allowed to do, that they can now apply for access. And I guess if you are in a situation where your grandparent has to apply for access, you're probably not in a good have a good relationship with the child's parents, or the remaining child's parent in this case, because otherwise you wouldn't need the order. And so that's going to, may trigger the retaliation of asking for child support by the child's parent.
So that was an unintended consequence of this Children's Law Reform Act.
Yeah, custody access on one side and child support on the other are actually quite separate, and they're not to be combined. So, but obviously, when one side's asking for something, the other side may ask for something back, and that's, I think, part of what's happened in this case.
So this could be precedent setting. This is going to be a very important court case to watch, isn't it?
Yes. Obviously, if the grandparents get hit for child support, then other people are going to be looking for their grandparents to be paying child support, especially when the family needs money and where the grandparents have been very involved in the children's lives up to that point.